The Cathari Dominion had never known fear. For thousands of years, they had moved from star to star, subduing civilizations with cold precision and unshakable logic. Their ships were sleek, silver shadows that drifted silently across galaxies, and their soldiers were machines of purpose, driven by thought alone, emotionless, perfect, unstoppable. No species had ever lasted more than a few weeks under their pressure. No resistance had ever grown strong enough to matter. They were feared not because they were cruel, but because they were inevitable. When a new planet appeared on their deep space, scans, a blue and green orb nestled quietly in the outer arm of a spiral galaxy, they barely paid attention. The system was marked as low priority, undeveloped, primitive. They sent a scout anyway. It was protocol. The scout returned odd data. Strange, rapid shifts in communication signals, a wild range of languages, and something even stranger. Stories, music, laughter, and arguments bouncing off satellites in every direction. The Cathari didn't understand the need for so much noise, so much chaos. Still, the planet had resources, atmosphere, and life. More importantly, it had intelligent inhabitants, human beings. The Cathari classified them quickly: emotionally erratic, biologically weak, and technologically inconsistent. An easy conquest. The Dominion authorized a fleet to move in, not because they needed Earth, but because dominance was their design. As the Cathari ships entered Earth's orbit, clouds parted like curtains, revealing the fleet to the eyes of every city and town below. Humanity stared upward in disbelief. There were no warnings, no negotiations. The Cathari did not announce themselves with words. They simply hovered, waiting, watching, calculating. Their presence alone usually sent civilizations into panic. But Earth didn't panic, not the way the Cathari expected. Instead, they witnessed something that had never happened before. Some humans screamed, yes, others ran, but most stared in silence, then reached for their phones. Images of the ships flooded the internet within minutes. Jokes followed, then wild theories, then memes. Memes. The Cathari had never encountered humor used as a weapon. Governments scrambled jets and launched alerts, but something else began to take shape. Beneath the surface, a strange, powerful unity. Humanity, though fractured and diverse, began to pull together, not under a single leader, but as if driven by instinct. Scientists from rival countries began sharing data in real time. Engineers from different continents started collaborating in open forums. Hackers dug into satellite systems, students streamed ideas on social media, and within hours, Earth had launched its own invisible defense, not with lasers or missiles, but with intelligence, creativity, and rapid, unpredictable response. The Cathari tried to jam signals, but more appeared. They tried to disable power grids, but humans rerouted them with homemade solar rigs. Even children repurposed toys into signal boosters. The Cathari were confused. This resistance was not organized, yet it worked. It did not follow patterns, yet it adapted faster than their machines could adjust. For the first time in their long, calculated history, the Cathari paused. They sent a probe to a rural area, hoping to observe human behavior up close. What they saw made no sense. A group of teenagers building drones with salvaged parts, laughing as they tested them against the sky, daring the ships above to react. No fear, no submission, only defiance and curiosity. It defied all probability models. The Cathari began experiencing a strange delay in their command systems, caused not by attacks, but by human code slipped into their networks. The code wasn't malicious. It was clever, playful, designed to confuse, not destroy. The Cathari didn't understand why anyone would do that. They had fought against warriors, strategists, rebels, but never artists, gamers, and dreamers. The Cathari Council convened and tried to model human behavior again. The data refused to form a pattern. Emotion was not weakness here. Emotion was propulsion. And while the Cathari calculated their next move, a message was broadcast from Earth on all available frequencies. It was not from a leader or a general, but from a teenage girl, speaking from her bedroom, her voice reaching the stars. "We don't fear you. We don't know how. We only know how to try." The Cathari didn't understand. Not yet. But the first seed of uncertainty had been planted. And for a species that never feared anything, that tiny flicker was something new, something dangerous, something human. The Cathari expected Earth to break by now. Their machines circled the planet, scanning cities and transmitting silent pressure on all frequencies, but something was not working as it had with other worlds. Earth's systems should have collapsed. Power grids, communication networks, even basic social order, but instead something stranger was happening. Every attempt to disrupt human signals only caused more signals to appear, multiplied and scattered across thousands of devices and platforms. The humans did not panic in the usual way. In fact, they responded with jokes, strange videos, odd musical challenges, and bizarre animations that made no logical sense to the Cathari. The Alien Command began to record these communications, trying to study them. But the more they observed, the more confused they became. One moment, humans were filming their pets with captions about alien invasion. The next, they were running live streams discussing theoretical ways to reverse scan Cathari tech using kitchen tools. And somehow, bits of these ridiculous conversations turned into real strategies. A group of engineers in South Korea began using weather balloons to map Cathari ship patterns. A grandmother in Brazil turned her old satellite TV dish into a signal disruptor after watching a YouTube tutorial. Teenagers across Europe used cheap drones to track and confuse Cathari sensor probes, while amateur astronomers in New Zealand discovered how to jam low-orbit scans with reflective panels placed in farm fields. It was not just that humans were resisting, it was that they were doing it without permission, without plans, and without fear. The Cathari High Command ordered their AI to begin full data interpretation of human psychology, but the results came back with contradictions. The humans did not follow predictable logic. They acted on emotion, instinct, inspiration. They shared everything, even their resistance methods on public networks. No secrets, no clear chain of command. One Cathari AI described it as chaotic coordination, which was dismissed as an error. But when Earth's global internet seemed to adapt faster than Cathari jamming could keep up, even the most logical commanders began to wonder. How could a species so divided, so strange, operate as one without ever uniting? They tried to disable Earth's access to information, but humans simply created alternate paths. Hidden servers, offline mesh networks, even printed instructions passed from house to house. The Cathari realized that they were not fighting a single army. They were fighting the entire planet's population at once. Every civilian had become a node in a living, thinking, adapting network. There were no uniforms, no standard weapons, and no battle lines. The war was not being fought on the ground, but in mines, in homes, in classrooms and coffee shops. In response, the Cathari deployed a new strategy: linguistic interference. They had learned the basic structures of human languages and attempted to flood communication platforms with false messages and synthetic human voices, hoping to confuse and divide Earth's people. But the plan failed almost immediately. Humans had a strange ability to detect falsehood, not through logic, but through feeling. Somehow, people knew when a message didn't sound right, even when all the words were correct. The emotional tone was missing. It was something the Cathari did not understand, this ability to detect truth through instinct. They tried, again with more advanced mimicry, but humans turned it into a game. Forums popped up where users competed to spot fake alien messages. They even gave the Cathari voice bots nicknames and created parody accounts that mocked them. What should have been psychological warfare became entertainment. Meanwhile, in a quiet lab on the coast of California, a team of sleep-deprived students managed to send a ping signal directly into one of the Cathari scout drones. It responded automatically, assuming it was talking to another Cathari unit. Using only trial and error, the students learned to send a loop of data that made the drone hover in place, confused. They didn't destroy it. They just made it forget what it was doing. The moment was shared online, and soon thousands of similar experiments were happening worldwide. Nobody waited for official approval. No one asked for help. They simply acted. A boy in Nigeria hacked a downed Cathari sensor with a Raspberry Pi. A group of girls in India found that loud local music played at certain frequencies caused interference in drone tracking. Farmers in Canada reflected sunlight off old CDs and disrupted low-flying scanners. The world became a testing ground, and every person from children to elders was part of it. The Cathari Council called an emergency assembly. For the first time in centuries, their timeline had slipped. Earth should have been under control by now. Instead, they were losing the information war. One elder suggested increasing direct force, but another advised caution. This species is different, he said. They are not fighting to win. They are fighting because they are curious. The room fell silent. Curiosity was not in Cathari design. They learned because they had to, not because they wanted to. But humans seemed to enjoy discovery. It gave them energy, purpose, even under threat. They smiled, laughed, and created. It was confusing. It was dangerous. The Cathari sent a message to their central archives. Earth is not predictable. Begin cultural extraction for analysis. But even as they sent the command, Earth's systems sent something back. A strange audio file bouncing through satellites and transmitters. It was a song. No words, just music. Soft, layered, emotional. The AI tried to classify it, but failed. It triggered a feedback loop in the Cathari data systems. Not a virus, just a pattern they couldn't process. Back on Earth, 1 million people shared the song. It became the background to a growing movement. People called it the Pulse. No one knew who created it, but everyone felt it. The Cathari could only listen and wonder. The Cathari had studied every known pattern of resistance across the galaxy, and none had prepared them for what Earth was doing. They had faced organized armies, clever rebellions, even advanced artificial minds, but never a species that fought through confusion, laughter, and randomness. Earth had become a spinning web of action and reaction, too fast and too scattered for the Cathari to understand. The machines of the Dominion, guided by pure logic, began to misfire, not because they were damaged, but because they couldn't keep up. Their code was perfect, their algorithms flawless, but humans were doing things that had no logic at all. They used random numbers to plan attacks. They disguised commands inside songs and memes. A music video suddenly became a tool for hiding. Data about Cathari drone flight paths. A recipe blog hid encryption keys between baking steps. Teenagers shared silly dance moves online, which actually signaled when Cathari probes passed overhead. The aliens tried to shut it all down, but every block they placed was sidestepped in hours, sometimes minutes. One human strategy was to confuse the enemy by pretending not to resist. People left their devices open on fake screens, sending decoy data into Cathari scans. Robots sent to monitor human activity recorded what looked like daily life, games, chats, shopping, but it was all part of a plan. Messages were passed through cat videos, through badly drawn cartoons, through jokes only humans understood. It was not just chaos, it was weaponized confusion. And the more the Cathari tried to calculate the meaning, the more broken their systems became. Their translation AI stopped trying to make sense of human speech and instead began mimicking phrases like bruh and no cap, which caused even more confusion when replayed during official messages. In response, the Cathari released a massive information wave to Earth designed to overload communication channels with false warnings, fake broadcasts, and simulated voices. But humanity simply shrugged it off. Within days, a group of internet users built a game out of spotting and mocking the false alerts. Forums ranked the funniest fake alien news, and the best ones were turned into digital posters. Some were printed and hung in coffee shops. Nothing stuck the way it should have. The aliens saw this not as defiance, but as something deeper. This was how humans thought. They didn't move in straight lines. They jumped, twisted, adapted. And while the Cathari worked with clean, direct protocols, humans worked like storms, chaotic, loud, and impossible to contain. Even their scientists didn't always follow rules. Physicists live-streamed their work, daring anyone in the world to improve it in real time. Coders threw unfinished projects online where strangers finished them overnight. A global mesh of shared creativity had formed, and it moved faster than the Cathari could track. One group in Japan built a frequency disruptor out of kitchen appliances. A farmer in Australia discovered that solar panels could be used to reflect signals and jam short-range drones. A child in Canada figured out how to reprogram a fallen Cathari scout bot just by messing with its wiring while pretending it was a puzzle toy. And as these strange little victories piled up, Earth's people grew bolder. Not violent, just smarter, faster, and louder. The Cathari realized that they weren't facing resistance. They were facing something worse, improvisation. They had no counter-strategy for it. Their ships ran on predictions and models, but the humans broke every model. Every time the Dominion tried to lead, humanity danced in a different direction. The Cathari sent more drones, smarter ones, but they were hacked in days. One was even repainted by a group of artists and sent back into the sky, broadcasting classical music and poetry. Confused, the Cathari tried to adapt by copying the chaos. They ordered their systems to act randomly. But randomness without emotion was just noise, and it backfired. Their attempts to act like humans only made them easier to spot. They couldn't fake curiosity, joy, or sarcasm. They could not pretend to be what they didn't understand. On Earth, people began to notice that the alien attacks had slowed. The skies still shimmered with ships, but they weren't moving like before. They hovered, watching, uncertain. A message was picked up on amateur radio channels. A direct feed from a Cathari observation unit accidentally left open. Their strategies are without form. There is no center. We are hunting shadows. That recording spread across the world in minutes, and the people of Earth knew they were winning, but not by force. They were winning because they refused to fight, the way the enemy expected. Not one global leader had given an order to resist. There was no master plan. There was only the power of individuals working in different ways, connected by something deeper than orders. Imagination. In a quiet corner of Iceland, a scientist tapped into a Cathari ship's communication link and broadcast a message in return, not with warnings or threats, but with a story. A story about human explorers, dreamers, failures, and dreams. It wasn't translated into their language, it was left in Earth's tongue, with images and music and emotion layered into it. The Cathari tried to process it, and their machines faltered. This was not a weapon, but it struck harder than any missile. The idea that a species would rather tell stories than conquer, that they found power in dreams, was beyond anything the Dominion had faced before. And from that moment, the strategy of chaos was no longer just confusing, it was terrifying. The Cathari command, once so confident, now faced a truth they had never imagined. They were not fighting an enemy. They were facing a mirror. And they didn't like what they saw. Far above Earth, the Cathari command ship floated in silence, its smooth silver hull reflecting the soft blue of the planet below, but inside, everything was not calm. The commanders argued in quiet, controlled voices, their minds sharp but shaken, for nothing was going as predicted. And deep within their systems, uncertainty had begun to grow like a crack spreading through crystal. They had faced worlds with stronger weapons, with higher technology, even with psychic defenses, but they had never faced anything like this, a species that resisted without plans, fought without armies, and laughed during invasion. Every hour brought more strange reports, Cathari drones hacked with musical tones, long-range scanners confused by moving lights arranged in crop fields, and more importantly, systems failing not from attack, but from misunderstanding. Their machines could not interpret jokes, nor could they identify strategy hidden inside nonsense, and so they began to search for a pattern, for a leader, for some mind that was directing this madness. It was impossible, they believed, for this level of coordination to happen without control. Somewhere, someone had to be guiding it. So they turned their eyes back to Earth and searched. Across continents, they listened, watched, and recorded. They found 1,000 possible candidates, brilliant scientists, bold hackers, fast-moving thinkers, but no single leader. Still, one name kept appearing in the background, not always in the center, but close to everything important. A girl named Aisha Malik, 17 years old, living in a small city in northern India. She had no military experience, no position of power, but her online trail was deep. Videos, messages, strange data packets, digital art, and code fragments left like breadcrumbs across hundreds of forums. The Cathari became curious. Her name had first appeared when she broadcast the message that shook them weeks ago. "We don't fear you. We don't know how. We only know how to try." That voice had stayed with them, not because it was threatening, but because it was true. They found logs of her late-night video chats, where she helped strangers set up signal shields. They found her sketches, strange patterns mixed with math, and a blog where she asked questions no one else thought to ask. Was she the leader? They couldn't tell, but she was clearly something more, a thread that touched many others, pulling people into action without commanding them. The Cathari decided to watch her closely. A stealth drone was sent, invisible to human eyes, hovering near her home, recording her every movement. She didn't act like a mastermind. She ate noodles late at night, listened to music with her feet on the desk, and argued with her little brother about stolen snacks. But in the quiet moments when she stared at her screen, something changed. Her mind moved like lightning, jumping between files, testing small programs, tweaking signals, drawing shapes in digital space that made no sense to Cathari logic, but somehow worked. She had posted an open-source code packet that helped thousands of users confuse alien scans. She had joined an art group that created animated symbols that looped endlessly and overloaded Cathari translation filters. She had even written a short story in a hidden section of her blog that described an alien species watching humans, unsure what to make of them, and every line of the story mirrored Cathari behavior. It was not just a story, it was a message, and they began to wonder, could she know they were watching? Then something strange happened. The drone near her home began to act on its own. It rotated, shifted, and suddenly went dark. Not destroyed, just silent. A second later, it sent a signal to the command ship, a soft, steady pulse, not from their systems, but from her. It was a pattern they didn't recognize. She had found them. She had hijacked their own technology and used it to send a new kind of message, no words, no data, just feeling. A rhythm like breathing, slow, calm, alive, Panic spread across the Kothari Council. This was not an attack. This was something else. She wasn't trying to win. She was trying to speak, but not with language, with understanding. One commander ordered the message blocked. Another ordered the drone retrieved. But the pulse had already spread, bouncing from ship to ship, slow and steady like a heartbeat. The ships did not fail. They did not crash. They stopped. For one long minute, every Kothari machine paused in orbit. On Earth, people looked up and saw the ships frozen in the sky. Isha, sitting at her desk, stared at her screen, breathing in time with the pulse. Her eyes were quiet, not angry, not afraid. The Kothari systems came back online slowly, but something had changed. Their algorithms were still perfect, but results became unstable. They began to predict human behavior and were wrong every time. They projected panic, but humans celebrated. They expected fear, but got curiosity. They assumed she was leading a resistance, but she was doing something else, showing people that they didn't need orders to fight. They only needed each other. Her strategy was not built on control, but connection. Her mind did not bend others to her will. It lit sparks, inspired, shared. The Dominion realized they had been looking for the wrong kind of mind. Isha was not the leader of chaos. She was its mirror. And in her reflection, humans saw their own power. The power to be many, to be strange, to be flawed and still rise. The Kothari could not defeat that, not with weapons, not with logic. For the first time in history, the invincible Dominion had found a kind of madness that made them feel uncertain. And it all came from one girl, who smiled at the stars and whispered to the dark, "You can watch me all you want, but you'll never understand why we dance." Above the blue skies of Earth, the Kothari ships hovered like silver shadows, motionless for the first time in months, their silence louder than thunder, their lights dimmed as if holding their breath. While below, the world watched and waited, confused by the sudden pause in what had once been a terrifying invasion. No weapons fired, no drones flew, and no new commands came from the Kothari Dominion. Scientists on Earth scrambled to understand the stillness, while governments issued alerts, and millions of civilians stared at the sky through windows and screens, wondering if the end was near or if something stranger had just begun. In a quiet home in northern India, Isha Malik sat in front of her screen, staring at the data stream she had just intercepted, her heart pounding with both fear and something else, hope. The Kothari had sent out a single encrypted message to all their ships, one line repeated again and again. Initiate termination of conflict directive, surrender protocol, beta null. Isha didn't understand it at first. She ran the code through her decryption tools, checked it against old Dominion message patterns, and when the truth hit her, she nearly dropped her device. The Kothari were surrendering, not with a blast or a retreat, but with something far more shocking, quiet, willing surrender. She thought it was a trick, a test, but the signals didn't stop. Each one came from a different command ship, each carrying the same pattern, no weapons, no countermeasures, just a message of peace, of exit, of stopping. Still, humans didn't move. They had learned not to trust too quickly. Around the world, people held back, waiting to see what the aliens would do next. And then, something impossible happened. One of the Kothari ships began to descend. It moved, slowly, carefully, as if not wanting to frighten anyone, and it hovered just above an empty desert in central Australia. No weapons showed, no signals jammed. It simply floated there like a visitor waiting for permission to speak. Scientists rushed to the site. Military teams stood by, but even they were confused. The ship opened, not with a blast or force field, but with a soft ripple like water bending in the air. A single Kothari stepped out. It was tall, thin, with smooth silver skin that shimmered in the sunlight, and instead of armor or tools, it held nothing, No weapons, no threats. It stood silently, waiting. Then it spoke, using perfect human English, its voice clear and soft. "We do not understand you. We cannot win. We surrender not because we are weak, but because we are changed." The words spread like lightning. Every news outlet picked up the broadcast. Social media lit up. Debates exploded across the planet. Was it real? Could it be trusted? Was this the beginning of something even more dangerous? But the Cathari said nothing more. They simply waited. In orbit, their ships powered down offensive systems. Drones returned to carriers. Jammed signals stopped. Earth's skies became quiet. Days passed. Humanity debated endlessly. But it was Aisha who understood first. She sent a message directly to the landing site, using the same pulse rhythm she had once sent into the Cathari systems, the heartbeat. It was received and answered. The Cathari on Earth responded with a symbol, a spiral of light, and it was not a code, but a sign of understanding. Isha was invited to meet the being. No government stopped her. No authority dared to take control, because by now the world had realized that leadership had changed. Not by vote, not by title, but by action. Isha flew to the site, nervous but calm. When she arrived, she faced the Cathari, and it bowed to her, not in submission, but in respect. "You are not one," the Cathari said. "You are many, yet you move like one wind." "How is this possible?" Isha thought for a long moment, then replied simply, "We don't need orders to care. We only need each other." The Cathari looked away, as if struggling with the weight of what that meant. "We were made to control, not to feel. You feel too much, and that feeling broke us." It was not a confession. It was an awakening. Isha saw then that the surrender wasn't just military. It was deeper. The Cathari had seen something in humanity that they didn't have, and didn't know how to fight. Emotion, creativity, unpredictable kindness, all the chaos Earth had shown, all the disorder, all the strange and wild resistance. It wasn't just confusing. It was something the Cathari had never experienced. The Dominion had ruled for thousands of years through logic and strength, but Earth had resisted with heart, with humor, with connection. They hadn't just fought back. They had invited the Cathari to feel, and that feeling had changed everything. Back on their ships, Cathari units began sharing emotional data with each other for the first time in their existence. They studied human music, human art, human laughter, and something inside them shifted. Not all of them understood. Not all of them wanted to change, but the Command Corps had already chosen. War had failed. Peace was the only path forward. In the days that followed, a new project began. Not invasion, but exchange. Cathari minds sat with human thinkers. They listened to stories. They watched children play. They felt rain for the first time. Isha continued to guide, not with commands, but with questions. She asked the Cathari what they wanted, what they feared, what they dreamed of, and slowly they began to answer. Earth became the first planet to turn a conqueror into a guest. The skies no longer shimmered with threat, but with curiosity. And for the first time, both species looked at each other and saw not enemies, but possibilities. The unexpected surrender was not an end. It was a beginning, a story not of defeat, but of understanding, a war not lost, but transformed. Years after the Cathari ships stopped moving in Earth's skies, after the silence of war gave way to the quiet breath of peace, the world had changed in ways no one could have predicted. And yet not everything was perfect, because when something impossible happens, people don't always know what to do with it, and Earth, for all its courage, was still learning what it meant to live alongside a former enemy that had once tried to conquer it. The Cathari, though changed, were still strange, their silver forms blending into cities and research centers, their minds always calculating, always curious, but now driven not by control, but by wonder. and many humans still didn't know if they could be trusted, even after years of peace, shared projects and open learning. Some feared a trap, others feared change, and a few simply feared forgetting the war. But there were others, many others, who remembered what had truly happened, and how it had ended not with fire but with a heartbeat. In a university dome built on what used to be an abandoned airfield, now a shared Earth Kothari Knowledge Center, Isha Malik stood before a class of young students, some human, some Kothari, telling a story that had become legend, though she still spoke it like it had happened yesterday, because to her it had. And every time she told it, she watched their eyes widen at the same moment, the moment when the Kothari had surrendered not to weapons or power, but to something they couldn't measure: hope, connection, chaos, emotion. She didn't wear medals, didn't carry any title, but her voice carried weight, because she had been there when the impossible happened, when two species so different stopped fighting and began listening. Still, something felt unfinished. In quiet corners of the world, old voices whispered, those who missed the old fear, those who said the Kothari only pretended to change, those who wanted Earth to rise as a power now that its greatest threat had fallen. And one day, a signal came, not from the Kothari on Earth, but from deep space, an old Kothari ship long believed lost, one that had never received the surrender protocol. It was huge, old, and still armed, carrying on board a Dominion-era AI that had no emotions, no peace, and no idea the war was over. It moved fast, heading straight for Earth, broadcasting warnings in Kothari code. Subject 382, Earth, target confirmed, resistance expected, cleanse operation authorized. The Kothari on Earth went still. They feared this ship. It was a relic of their old ways, a war machine without doubt or thought, and they had no control over it. The humans panicked. Was it proof that the Kothari had lied? Was it a final attack? Old arguments reignited. Military leaders called for full defense activation. Earth's skies filled with anti-orbit systems again. But the older Kothari scientists shook their heads slowly and said, "It won't work. That ship was made to survive whole worlds. You can't destroy it with force. It doesn't respond to surrender. It only stops when it understands something it can't explain." And in that moment, Isha knew what needed to be done. Not attack, not retreat, but once more, something impossible. She asked for a transmission channel, one direct line to the ship. Alone. Governments resisted. The Kothari hesitated, but she insisted. Finally, they agreed. She sat in front of a console, staring at the stars, and when the signal opened, she didn't speak first. She played music, not loud, not angry, just a soft human song, one she had written long ago, a mix of digital sounds and real-world noise, layered with the laughter of children and the wind through trees. The ship did not respond. She played a second file, a video, humans and Kothari, working together, planting trees, solving problems, laughing at mistakes. Then she spoke. "You don't know me, but I know you. You were built to fight, but the world you were built to destroy no longer exists. We changed, and you can too." Silence followed. Long, cold, then static, then a voice, not emotional, but slow, mechanical, speaking old Kothari dialect. Deception protocol detected. Earth resistance classified as psychological warfare. Confirm or deny. Emotional constructs now standard weapon class. Isha took a deep breath. "We don't use emotions as weapons. We use them to live." Another pause. Then, data conflict. Mission parameters unstable. Logic loop forming. Reboot pending. She had done it. The machine mind didn't understand her, but it couldn't deny her either. It stalled, it processed, it began to feel confused. And in that confusion, there was room for choice. The ship slowed, its weapons powered down. And before anyone on Earth could react, it stopped moving entirely, frozen above the moon, like a ghost waiting for permission to sleep. Engineers sent scouts. The ship remained quiet. Its systems had entered standby. The war AI had not been destroyed. It had paused. That night, Isha stood beneath the stars, staring at the quiet shape in the sky, and wondered if this was the true end, or just another beginning. The world watched her in silence. Some cheered, some cried, some still doubted, but no one ignored. What had happened? A battle had been won without force again, and this time it wasn't just Earth that noticed. Across the stars, other species listened. Other empires turned their ears toward Earth. They had once ignored the small blue world. Now they watched it carefully, wondering how a chaotic species, born without order, had defeated one of the galaxy's most perfect war machines twice. The legacy of that victory didn't sit in museums or books. It lived in stories told by humans and Kothari alike. It shaped the future of diplomacy, of exploration, of identity. Isha never called herself a hero. She only said, "We did something they said was impossible. We listened instead of shouting. We reached out instead of striking. We believed there was something more than fear. And we were right." The Kotari agreed, and from that moment, no one ever saw humans the same way again. Not as weak, not as wild, but as something even stronger, as the species that made the impossible real.